Okay, it is 7:05. Thank you all for coming. This is General Government Subcommittee for 7:07 p.m. Let's see here. Item number 1 is call to order, and we have 4 of us present, and Ms. Shea is not. But we do have a quorum. Okay, item number 2 is the minutes, which I sent out. Are there any comments or questions, or?
I would just want a minute to read through them,
Okay,
Mr.
that's
Chair,
fine.
because
Yeah,
we did
since
just
we
get
just
the
got
email.
them.
That's fine.
You just told me to disregard everything beyond that. So I didn't even read it because you just said.
No, the minutes for the last meeting, Denise.
No, I understand, that wasn't right, but I would like to read them to know what
Yeah,
was discussed for
right,
this meeting.
right.
But you just said, yeah. I actually watched some of it.
I don't remember, I don't think it was you that seconded that motion, Counselor,
On the cold one?
on the Capital Planning Committee fiscal year. I thought that was Ms. Shea that seconded my recommendation to cut out, or maybe it wasn't Ms. Shea, to cut out the snow plow for the F1,
We're not
F350.
doing
Somebody
that.
did, but it wasn't you, I don't believe.
We're not doing those minutes. We've already
April
approved those.
13th,
We
those
approved
on the
those on
agenda.
April 13th, you're looking at the right agenda?
The April 13th, the one that was,
The one that's- no, it's May 31st.
May 31st.
because we had an updated agenda.
I don't know where April 13th came from.
Because it's in the packet.
Oh, it's in that pre?
We have in the previous packet, it's on there, April 13th.
Oh, the
agenda.
previous one we did
Yeah,
already. That was the
there's
other one.
another attachment.
Was it-
bottom.
The current agenda is May 31st.
This is so, okay.
It's a little confusing. Okay.
If you just look at the option, the, okay, table.
Okay.
What's, oh, it looks like there's a missing name, Lori name, and it's in red.
Oh,
Like you meant to put a name in there?
Oh, I didn't write the minutes,
Oh,
actually.
or somebody meant to put the
Sue
name
did.
in there?
Yeah. Where is it? Oh, right
Is
there.
it in the middle? Yeah.
That's when a new, what,
I don't know
oh,
who
Lori
that
name.
was.
asked what a
I'm
new.
not sure who that was.
Lori? I remember Lori being even here.
I thought that was Maureen, I thought it was
Oh, it was
Maureen that asked the
Maureen that asked the
question.
question, yeah. It was
So can
Maureen
we
that asked
just,
the
yeah,
Yeah.
that should be
That's
Maureen
Maureen's.
Doyle.
Okay, that's Maureen's. Okay.
I'm like, Lori, I'm like, there was no Lori here.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, because she was taking the minutes from the video, so.
Oh, yeah, this looks.
Yeah, I have no problem
accurate.
with minutes other than that one name.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, this looks.
Can I send it to
I'll
them?
move to approve the minutes as amended.
As amended, yeah.
Second.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor?
Oh, wait, yeah, just
I-
missing.
Good.
Well,
Good,
I'm gonna
good.
abstain, but I
Yes.
have a comment.
Okay, good, good.
So when I'm looking at this, and the human resources request, so I was just looking for that backup document. And I'm looking at the conversation, I have a concern about this, I wasn't here, but Councilor Marquetti asked for details which positions were recruited, and Ms. Russell suggested to speak to Ms. Rabina for these details.
Yeah, she didn't.
I see that. That, to me, is inadequate for a subcommittee. Just saying, going forward, people need to come to subcommittee prepared, because the point of subcommittee is not just to quickly get something passed to get on Monday's agenda. It's to be able to discuss issues and things, and in case there are more questions, and it may take more than one evening to get your vote in. So to say, that's a simple, you ask for an extra $9,000, the information should have been presented as to what that money was for. So I just don't like that I'm just stating a concern as
Okay.
a previous counselor and a current member and taxpayer. Those are things that when you
Okay.
come here, it's not just to get something washed by and quickly passed up, which may just get quickly voted on.
Right.
It's for transparency. So,
I
you know,
don't-
how
I
many
don't-
positions was the 9,000 covering? Was that like one position? Was it 5 positions? And, you know, so things like that.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think Miss Russell brought this forward, and that's why she didn't have an answer.
Well,
Yeah, sure.
again, I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah,
then
it came
state,
from- it came
we
from-
don't have representation
Right.
in numerous meetings that I've been at, in
Right.
the last 3 to 6 months especially. We have no representation, so it's a moot point to meet and go over things that nobody has any information on. It's kinda silly.
It
And
can
it's,
be,
and
yes.
frankly, it's wrong, plain and simple, it's wrong.
Right.
Wrong government, bad government like that. Okay, just stating concerns for the
Okay.
public.
No,
You've got a good point.
and I would agree
You've
with
got a
you.
good
I
point,
think we
yes.
need to have somebody from the office here. The
That's
manager, the HR, somebody.
Council
If the
does
manager
not
can't be here,
manage
then-
the town.
No, right, we don't, it's not our job.
if the manager can't be here, he should be making sure that somebody
A
in his stead is
representative.
here, like Miss Robena.
Well, she
Um,
is assistant manager.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And under the circumstances,
So if we
she's
don't
also
have
her
a
HR
manager
director.
and an
that
That's her,
assistant
that is her job.
manager.
No, she should be here if he can't be here.
This is true.
But this happened with finance too. This
Mhm.
happened when we had our capital stuff. This
Mhm.
happened, so why are we, you know, we can all say what we want, but we have no
This whole
skin in the game. There is
yeah.
really no, you know, counselor's gonna vote up there on the dais,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but down here,
Well,
so,
this whole spring communication
yeah,
has been, has
subcommittee.
broken down for,
yeah.
hopefully. we
I
will
just
see
hope
some
it
of
gets,
that.
gets corrected at some point.
Me too,
Mhm.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Can I just add something?
yeah, go ahead.
Counselors, please remember this when you're voting for these high salaries for these people who do not go to these meetings. A lot of people don't need these high salaries that they're given because they don't earn them. I am very underwhelmed by some people who have gone up there, and it's like, these are our staff.
But
It's very sad.
I was just said, if they can't make it, then we just need more
Details.
information.
Need details, yes.
So that you're not passing something over to council, we'll worry about it on Monday, but that's not, then why are we even sitting here? Why does
Mhm.
charter have us have subcommittees?
Mhm.
There's
You
some
know,
argument
it-
to that.
Agreed.
yes,
There was for
absolutely.
transparency, question, answer time, time for department heads to get the answers to people so that everybody was more prepared at a council meeting and they don't go on for 10 hours. All right, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever.
Well, we end up having subcommittee meetings that go on for 3 hours, and then council meetings that go on for 3
All right,
hours.
exactly. Anyway,
Okay,
Thanks.
good point, though. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? All those in favor? And you are abstaining, okay. Okay, that's, okay. Okay, item number 4 is to discuss and review the resolution in support of changing the state flag and seal of Massachusetts, and take any action there.
Can we have a reading of it for the record, Mr. Chair?
Sure, if you would like to.
I feel like that would be appropriate.
I have my thing here somewhere. Where the hell did it go? The resolution in support of changing the state flag and seal of Massachusetts. Whereas in the history of the state of Massachusetts, the history of the state of Massachusetts is replete with instances of conflict between European colonists and the native nations of the region, who first extended the hand of friendship to colonists on their shores in 1620 and helped them to survive starvation during the settlers' first winters on the land. Whereas members of the native nation for whom the state of Massachusetts is named were ambushed and killed by Miles Standish, first commander of the Plymouth colony in April 1623, barely 2 years after the Pilgrims arrived on their shores. Whereas the colonial broadsword brandished above the head of the native man on the Massachusetts state flag and seal is modeled after Miles Standish's own broadsword, borrowed for that purpose from the Pilgrim Hall in Plymouth by the illustrator Edmund Garrett in 1884. Whereas the belt binding the native's cloak on the flag and seal is modeled after a belt worn by Metacomet, known to the English as King Philip, who was among the Wampanoag leaders who resorted to mutually destructive war in 1675 and 76 in defense of native lands against colonial encroachment. Whereas the proportions of the body of the native man on the flag and seal were modeled from a native skeleton kept in Winthrop, the bow modeled after a bow taken from a native man shot and killed by a colonist in Sudbury in 1665, and his facial features taken from a photograph of an Ojibwa chief from Great Falls, Montana, considered by the illustrator to be a fine specimen of an Indian, though not from Massachusetts. Whereas the history of relations between Massachusetts since colonial times and the native nations who continue to live within its borders includes the forced internment of thousands of so-called praying Indians on Deer Island in Boston Harbor, where they died by the hundreds of exposure in 1675, their subsequent enslavement in Boston, Bermuda, and the Caribbean islands, the offering of 40 pounds sterling as a bounty for the scalps of native men, women, and children in Massachusetts beginning 1686, increased to 100 pounds sterling for the scalps of native adult males by 1722, half of that amount for native women and children, whereas Native Americans were legally prohibited from even stepping foot into Boston from 1675 to 2005, when that law was finally repealed, whereas the 400th anniversary of the landing of the colonists at Plymouth Plantation in the year 2020 afforded every citizen of the Commonwealth a chance to reflect upon this history and come to an awareness of the possibility of a better relationship between the descendants of the colonial immigrants and the native nations of the Commonwealth. Whereas Native Americans have long suffered the many abuses of racism, appropriation of their symbols for public schools and sports teams, the loss of their ancestral lands, and the encroachment of their cultural lifeways. Whereas the area now known as the town of Southbridge shares a rich native history with modern tribal nations such as the Nipmuc and Mohegan, who have lived in this area for thousands of years before the first colonial settlers arrived in 1730. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town of Southbridge hereby adopts this resolution in support of the work of the Special Commission on the official seal and motto of the Commonwealth, established. Hold on, I gotta shift my. It's got a weird. Where was I? A motto of the Commonwealth, established by a resolve of the General Court in 2021, and appointed by the Governor to recommend changes to the current flag and seal of Massachusetts, and in support of a new flag and seal for the Commonwealth that may better reflect our aspirations for harmonious and respectful relations between all people who now call Massachusetts home. The town clerk shall forward a copy of this resolution to Senator Ryan Fatman and Representative Peter Durant with the request that they support the work of the aforementioned Special Commission and advocate for a new seal and motto for the Commonwealth.
I make a motion to recommend council approves
I'll second.
support,
Okay.
this support, sends it off as requested.
Any comments or questions?
I just want to thank Mr. Detmold for all his work on this. You have been here every single meeting, coming quite a bit of ways. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, and I'm happy to support it. I'm happy to support the work of former Governor Baker and current Governor Healy on this issue. I think it's a common sense issue. It's been talked about since I was a kid about changing the seal and the flag because it was discriminatory. So it's a long time that it happened, so I will support the measure.
I gotta admit, I had not heard about it until he brought it to my attention, but.
I want to thank the work of the Special Commission and all the Native peoples that are on that commission. And I want to thank Elizabeth Coldwind, Santana Kaiser for really educating me, along with Mr. Detmold, about what this means to our Nipmuc residents who live in town. And how important this is. And I do appreciate that the resolution includes the Caribbean islands, because that does include Puerto Rico. And how important this is to many of us, on a flag that we honor, right? That's something that is in reverence, our flag, our American flag, and all the flags that we have that represent something that we honor. And to have these symbols on there that harm people and that give messages to our residents who are members of Native communities. It's really important for us to support this resolution along with the other 56 some odd towns. 76, okay, see, even more.
Hopefully it'll be 300 plus.
And an issue that has kind of, been bipartisan, right? And having Governor Baker bring this forward is, speaks to how important this is across the board, so.
Anybody else have anything they want to say? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, cool, excellent. Okay, and
Okay.
thank you for coming,
Thanks,
Dave.
David.
Good luck.
Mr. Detmo.
Okay, when is the next council meeting anyway? We got 2 weeks from now, right?
Yeah.
And item number 5 is to review standard operating procedure number 14, the transfer and capital expenditure policy, and take any action thereon. And we did get that in the last week's packet, so I resent it to everybody shortly before this meeting, because as I said, I had noticed that for some reason we didn't have a packet for this meeting. So it's the same text as that one.
Well, I reiterate that your packet had it last week, and we should
Right.
be more mindful. We used to be told that all the time, be mindful, don't print so much, if you got the stuff,
Exactly.
save it, that's your job, so.
Yeah, because I've got mine electronically, so
Yeah.
I don't print it at all. So this is note 14. Okay, so one of the issues that I know that I had seen when I was looking through this is the text here is really set up as the original draft version of what we had talked about with Ron back in at least 2018. It's labeled as 2018, but the problem is that that includes the language that we allocate up to the greater of $5,000 or 30% of any of the sum specified, blah blah blah, which we originally got rid of the or 30%.
Yeah.
And I remember we had debated whether we wanted to do. I think we threw around numbers everywhere between like 1,000 and 10,000 when we were originally discussing it. I don't think anybody was serious about 10,000.
No.
But 1 to 5, somewhere between 1 and 5 makes sense. So I think there's definitely, the way this is phrased, I don't know how we ended up getting this uncorrected version in our policy book, but it needs to go. So that 30% needs to go, definitely. Denise?
Well, so having worked on this quite a bit back then,
Yeah.
like
exactly.
ad nauseum,
Exactly.
to get some
I
sort
think
of
it was
consensus.
all three of us back then.
Yeah.
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 That was
The
the
one
point,
thing I
yeah.
first noticed, let's start at the beginning, this awarding authority thing, that language, I don't get that. That does not belong there. That's on the other, that was when
Yeah,
we
that
were
was-
doing
I was
this
kinda
very
crazy from
big
that one, yeah.
award, that had to do
I
with
don't know what
designer
that
stuff, so completely wrong to begin with on that, and I've never seen this particular version with awarding authority, or certainly would have said something. So this piece that's been saved in the booklet was wrong. The 30%, right? That brought up a lot of discussion back when Councillor Jovan was first in, and when council decided not to follow what had been determined to be legally valid. Having gone through numerous, much legal advice at the time. And we thought what we had designed was a really good purpose, because what was happening is what continues to happen. It's, the constant transfers of various amounts and everything being brought. There were a number of safeguards in this particular policy, which is why I still think it's a good policy. And as I was saying a little earlier, I believe it's a good policy based on my research that took place during the charter review side of things. We spent a lot of time on old charters, 2 charters back, the
Right.
original, and what was allowed and what wasn't allowed. And we did present that actually in the book to council in our comments as to why a transfer policy or some type of other inference, allowing a town manager and department heads to work together and manage the community, which is
Right.
what you pay big bucks for, according to
Absolutely.
the citizen speaker too. So in this case, one of the things that I don't even know if it was ever done, and I questioned it after I left, was maintaining a log of such reallocations and provide a monthly report to council. And the reason that was so important was because people would say, well, geez, they're doing, for instance, overtime transfers constantly. Well, why aren't we budgeting properly so we don't have overtime transfers? Well, and sometimes that's just not as easy. We found that mostly in the police department
Yes.
and in the fire department. especially in police, because you have, need for, sometimes you're short on how many officers we have, and
Well,
there was a
this is
lot
not-
of
yeah.
reasons, and we had, again, lots and lots of discussion, and a lot of department heads, I will point out, came to those meetings
Yeah.
because they were as concerned as the majority who voted for this policy, in order to come up with something that just made sense,
Yep.
and that was legal, and that made, so the reason, again, with charter review was, well, if you were gonna do something, rather than have to vote every year, maybe you just put it back to something in the charter the way it was originally. Oh, not exactly, but something similar to the first charter, which did allow intra-departments,
Transfers.
Right,
the
right.
transfers, and then others were, anything beyond, between, had to go to council.
Yeah.
Right.
So there was so
And
much
that's still the case,
safeguard.
Yeah.
There was, so you were gonna get a report, and so you would know if a counselor is actually reading the information that would come from a manager, even though this didn't keep coming like it should have, that, council would know, geez, there's a red flag to this. There's something happening, so why is it? And then you could bring in a department, you could say what's going on with the budget.
Right.
The manager could say, could see it as well, because back then, when our finance director, Karen Harnoy, had weighed in as well, we questioned whether that was a burden, that would be a burden to do those types of things. And she said, no, because I have to print that anyway. Those are
Right.
things I have reports like that anyway. So all those little safeguards were important. And then, of course, you end up with language which, according to the lawyer, as long as you, his comment was, in order to be safe, he didn't feel there was a problem to begin with, but in order to really solidify the will of each council, that you would vote it at each
Yeah.
new budget
meeting,
That's what
budget meeting.
yeah.
We had done that at one point too,
Yeah.
for one council
Yeah.
I was on, and then we'd never.
And
did
then,
it again.
Exactly,
then there was a
never
whole
came
lot of, upsetness and whatever, and they said, well, we're just not gonna do it. So then they didn't do it, and then therefore, they never followed the rest of the rules, so.
Which is one question is that I've always wondered is why. I mean, you said that was done by the attorney as kind of a safeguard, but is it really necessary, considering by general practice, all of the other policies, once we vote them, they're standing policies until we change them. Whereas why should this? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense that we would have to incorporate this particular language every year when every other policy just goes until we change it.
I think it was the idea they didn't want to bind future councils' ability to have oversight of the funds. I
But
think
by
it was a legal
definition, all of
opinion
the
that
other
came back.
policies bind future councils by definition.
I don't disagree,
As
but
such,
that was
the
the
charter
opinion that
as
we
the
got back.
There was so
bylaws.
much concern about the charter situation, saying that we're abdicating duties.
Yeah.
Or not.
By rights, you were actually doing what charter says.
Exactly.
When charter is silent on, or not, when there's ever any, it's number 14, it's like on the back side of I don't have the charter with me. If there's ever unclear as to what direction or what powers that the council has, or it lies within the council. The power
Right.
lies within
Right.
the council.
Yes.
And so therefore, this is sort of interpreting that, I guess if you wanted to say, or it's solidifying that is, I guess the word I'd say, that the power lies within the council. Therefore, if council does it like that, there is no question as to, and each budget is voted each year, so each year you're saying that those numbers can be allocated that way without, without council. Because there was so much conflict. And I still believe it, whatever majority of the council can believe it or not believe it, but it is something that should have been addressed every single year, regardless of whether council voted one time no, then
Absolutely.
the next time this policy is still standing, and it should have been addressed each time there was a budget presented. And I don't believe it has, not
It
that I
has
watch all
not.
those
Maybe
meetings,
that
because
first year there
I
aren't
frankly
that, yeah.
feel as though I'm going back in time, and time's just put me into a big black hole.
Like I said, I only remember we did it one year and that was it.
Yeah,
There was a
pretty
lot
much
of
that's all I remember
controversy,
too,
it was
yeah.
asked
Yeah.
for me too, there was very strange,
I remember I
finding strange language, I was pulling out papers like mad, and this is the closest, with the exception of saying, yeah, we don't need the 30%, that 30%, when it came, for instance, the police, people said, well, 30% of, so that's, or, it shouldn't be an or, could be, there shouldn't have been an.
I think it was something. It was like the lesser of the two,
The
or
the
something.
lesser
Yeah,
of the two,
is
it
what
was
we
not
put in there.
supposed to
Yeah.
be,
Right.
the 30% should never be
Greater
5,000,
than.
yeah,
It
greater
shouldn't be
than
like $30,000, right?
Right.
Like it should be whichever is
So
the
up
lesser.
to 5, fine,
Yeah.
up to 5. We
Yes.
were just trying to keep it lower, right? We were trying to save
Exactly.
30% of something, not $5,000 of something. So, whatever. It
So
just,
is
it was
this-
so long ago that it,
It's a standing policy we still currently have.
So this is the current language?
It's the current language in our policy book. yes.
Except
It's
this is,
not the one that
it's
was
written
adopted
wrong.
by
It's not
It's
what
not
we
a
actually
awarding
voted on.
authority, it's
Okay.
just a standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
Capital expenditure procedure. It has nothing to do with the awarding authority. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, that was obviously just cut and pasted.
I think we need.
As things disappear, when we find out
Yeah.
from
Right.
book to book, things disappear and they're not crossed and left in red to see the changes, to see history,
Yep.
as it is done on the state,
Yep.
and it's a shame.
Very
So,
good. Mike, good.
At the last meeting, I said I would take a look and see exactly what happened on this policy. And I know the policy, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it says it was passed on April 23rd, I think. So I went back to look at the 23rd, the meeting of the 23rd, agenda of 2018.
Yeah.
And it said, agenda item number 31, vote to adopt standard operating procedure number 4, town council transfer and capital expenditure policy. And then it was a long discussion.
It was, yeah.
I know that.
And we talked about it for
Ms.
hours and
Clemens
hours
was
before
on the
lunch.
council, Nash was on the council,
Yep.
Dave Smith spoke. But in the end, the final proposal was, a motion was made by Councilor Manna, second by Councilor Leclerc, to send agenda item number 31 to subcommittee for further review. Vote show of hands, all in favor. And then the next agenda item 32, vote to pre-approve the remaining FY18 transfer requests as per standard operating procedure. And again, Councilor Leclerc made a motion to amend this item to include transfers under 5,000. There was no second, and Chairman Clemens said there is no action to take on this item. And then I went a little further, and the next time it was brought up, and that was at the July 15th, 2019 meeting,
Mm-hmm.
vote to amend item, that was again talking about the policy itself. It was postponed to the August 5th, 2019 meeting, but there, as far as I can tell, there was no August 5th, 2019 meeting for it to go to, so it never came up again. So I don't know why the policy says it was passed on that day when it was not voted on. It was
it was
postponed,
voted on.
and I don't know why.
Yeah, I remember
I
voting
don't know
on
why
it
it's
too.
still in the books, because when I looked up, it's never been talked about since then. It was postponed and never brought up
It
again.
hasn't been talked about since then,
And then
no.
the issue, I think the issue that I have is that in our, as Ms. Clemens said, in our charter, except otherwise provided in this charter, all general, corporate, legislative, policymaking, and appropriation powers of the town shall be vested in the town council. And if you look at what happened the other night at PPP, now each single transfer was not 30%, but when you added them all together, there was over $100,000
Yeah,
in
I
transfers.
saw that, right.
So do you want to let the town managers just to go ahead and say, I'm making these transfers without the town council knowing about it?
That's not
I
what it
would
says.
say, I would not want
If it's
that
within the
power.
department and under $5,000, I think my personal take is
Yeah.
it's fine.
It's under
Yeah.
I trust my managers to do the job. Why the heck are we paying them a huge salary if they can't trust with
Okay, now
$5,000?
let me answer that. Because we
Okay,
are a
hold
town
on.
council form of government,
That
that's
is
why.
true.
We are not a selectman form of government.
has
If
one.
you
But we are
recall,
not town managers either.
Yeah, exactly.
You are not supposed to be on the
We're not the
day-to-day of
managers.
management.
Yeah, that's not our job.
I don't
Ours-
understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is the council are the ones who rule.
We
We
are-
have the power
We
to
are,
decide
we are a
appropriations.
legislative
Yes.
policy body. We are
Once
not- we are not
appropriated, once
managers.
appropriated, it's
Right.
within the budget to spend it, as long as it stays
Appropriation
in that
powers.
department. So if you've got some extra cleaning fluid money and you wanna use it instead for buying 2 brooms, you should be able to do that. It shouldn't have to come to council.
Well, in my opinion,
That's
and this
okay.
is just my opinion,
Yeah,
they should come to the council. I don't care if it's one dime, they should
but
come to
it's,
the
the
council.
problem is
You
coming,
already voted it.
when you do that, the problem is that's
Oh,
one,
they
that's
budget.
been an issue for years. And one of the issues that, I think it makes sense for the larger amounts that we should be keeping eyes on,
Always.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Within
Yes.
different
But-
departments, absolutely.
And I'll have-
And
You know
even
that
bigger ones within the
This
department.
was not an issue until that year, when somebody brought it up and suddenly said, wait a minute, why are you doing it this way?
Right,
But
that
I-
was weird,
But
But,
yes.
which is why in charter, one of the changes was to reincorporate that segment,
Language,
that
yes.
change. The language went from originally having that type of language in it, and then not having the language, because it was my understanding from the history books that, and the history gossip, that, you know, you had horrible town managers spending all kinds of money, and they decided to fix it by changing charter. It's my understanding also that there were lots of charter changes that continually went to the state, and the state got mad about a lot of charter changes at one time when council wasn't really going, you know, they were just sending charter changes up at one point. And that's, you know, so then we kind of backed off, I did way before my time, backed off, and there weren't a lot of charter changes after that, because technically you do the the committee, and then council can send them up, and then the state really wants you to send it to your people to vote, at least to get some sort of feeling. Unless you have an elected charter commission, that's what should happen. It's not that council can't send things up on their own and not say they're not gonna get a vote of people, like, especially if it's just language, correction stuff, something that doesn't have substance, then the state might not say you have to go take a vote of that.
Can I
But-
just say one last thing then?
Okay, so I'm just saying, this is the process, and my understanding was that there was a bad management situation going on, and the fix was to change charter. But charter should be more stable and not fluid, based on bad manager, good manager.
Right.
You have oversight by policies and procedures and reports and governance. That's what you do. But
Right.
anyway, that's just my always.
And the only last thing I wanted to say was that I think that rather than make this decision right before an election, we should let the next town council decide this issue, because really they're the ones that are gonna have to deal with this.
There's some truth to that.
So that's all I wanted to say, thank you.
There's some truth.
I don't think we're making a decision. I think
Where's-
what's happening here is just what's happened back numerous years. You're talking about this situation, and you're talking about policies and procedures, and you're talking about whether or not certain things work. And I'm going to say here, we sit here as people, elected people and people.
Right.
And we're talking about stuff that involves the town manager,
Yep.
finance, and everybody else, and departments and everything. And once again,
Who's not here?
there is no representation, so
Yes, that's true. That's-
I'm just saying it would be something that it'd be very nice
You're
if
making
we,
my point for me.
well, but how has this happened? I would just like to ask how this happens. Oh,
I'd like to know that too.
24-hour town manager
I
does not.
agree. I agree.
Exactly.
That is an
Okay.
issue, yeah.
The point is you need to have some more input on this.
Yes, I agree.
And it's nice to be talking about it
I
again,
agree.
although it's also a little stressful. But I still think it's an issue. It was an issue on our charter review. It's an issue still now. And
It
it's-
is, yeah.
It's a policy that
It will
stands
never,
there, and I
it
don't
won't go
think
away
you
until
can
we
do
deal
it.
with it.
Right, so
That
I
is
think
true.
you need more discussion, and yes, new council makes more sense, new Gen Gov, new whatever, who knows? But
Well, it's brought up
at
'cause we
least
said we were gonna
it's
talk
out,
about it.
it's being discussed again.
Right,
And I think
absolutely.
in light of charter review, this is, you want a policy versus change, whatever.
Right, I mean,
But
I
you
guess
should
the question
still
is,
do
do we
something.
want it to be policy or do we want it to be bylaw?
And I still think it wouldn't hurt to send out send out something, and maybe the TM will see some of this or read the notes or something, but send something out to department heads again. Is this still an issue? Have it come back anonymous, I don't really care, but is this still a problem? Or still a concern of yours? Maybe get a consent, ask the people who manage the day-to-day operations. Is this, in the last few years, since this change took place,
Mhm.
since you were now made to do all this, and now, has this, what concern do you still have about it? Do you still, is there something what's your, I think it's important to get your feedback like that on something that affects the day-to-day operations.
Right, okay. George, then Scott.
I think you found at the PP subcommittee meeting, when you say you want to put your trust into the managers when they're formulating their budgets and all that, you found at this last PPP subcommittee meeting that the department heads forwarded items for a budget where the town manager said, no, don't put it in the budget, we'll do it with the leftover money at the end of the year. So that's not a way to do that. And both the police chief and fire chief reported that McCall told them to do that. For example, the chairs. McCall told them, take the money out of the budget that he submitted and wait for the chairs, bring the chairs up at the end of the year when there's transfers being done. Am I correct? Is that how it happens?
Absolutely.
So when you put your trust in the manager, and the manager, as he formulates his budget, he's formulating the budget to appease everybody, keep it as low as can be. But then when he tells his department head, take this out of the budget,
Right.
and we'll do the transfers at the end of the year. That's not the way to do it, to run a budget either.
No, that is true. And one of the issues, of course, we have, I think, is that we always end up having a fairly significant number of transfers and dollar value of transfers at the end of the year.
Right, but
That just
And
means
for
there's
things-
extra money
I
somewhere,
know.
that's awesome.
But you found when the
So you
when the
don't buy
town
the chairs 'cause you don't
manager,
really need them.
when the town manager directs the department head to
I guess,
remove the money
Yeah,
for a
They
particular
were
item,
unnecessary.
excuse me?
But if they're unnecessary, if they're not an emergency item and they come out of the budget so the budget can be done,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the year you find out you didn't spend it on the overtime because for some reason that year you were okay, why wouldn't you buy stuff that you,
one-time items
I
that
don't
you
mean
would need
like
to get.
reams of paper from
Yeah.
school, I'm talking about specific items.
I just don't
That
think
seems
when
like a
they-
waste of
when
money.
the
Some of those
department
items-
head feels that it was necessary to be in the budget,
yeah.
and then the town manager decides to take that out of the budget to keep the budget either level funded or whatever reason it was, and to put it at the end of the year is
Yeah,
That's a
not a
good thing.
practical
We're
way to
saving
do the
taxpayer
budget.
money. Why wouldn't you want to save taxpayers money? Like, I don't understand why that's
How
an
are you
issue.
saving
Yeah,
taxpayers?
Because we're
Yeah.
taking money that would have gone back into the general fund, instead of adding it to the tax rate, we're taking one-time funds to buy one-time items.
You're
Why
not
is that a
taking-
waste?
I don't understand what you're saying, Jackie.
I got the answer to that, I think, like the,
Okay.
Okay,
what we learned through our budget process is a budget game that gets played. Yeah, there were managers that were more trustworthy than other managers, I'm not gonna argue that point. The one that we just had agreed with the shell game with the budget, and look, we level funded our budget. Well, there are certain things in the budget that become slush funds for the end of the year. So, and they admitted it, we didn't bring it up, and we would like to do it. You put a budget together, put your best budget numbers, tell us what your real needs are. The question is, what the needs are, you gotta trust, always gotta trust your department heads, right? That's what we always say.
right.
I don't, but that's what they say. Trust your town manager, I'd love to, but I don't. Everyone that came from out of town came here, they did it their way, they left, and we ended up holding the bag. Now, go ahead, mumble all you want, but the bottom line comes down to is, I'm just gonna take a slice out of history with Florence Chandler. Florence Chandler would put a budget together, and these when budgets were really tight. At the end of the year, all the excess money went to free cash.
That's
You
normally-
certified your free cash on whatever your safe yield was. One year it was $300,000. The rest of it went back to levying the tax rate. And then they had a budget coming up the following year. You did your budget, put your chairs in. I'm not saying don't buy the chairs, but I'm saying don't play a shell game with the council. Because that's where the mistrust started, with the forklift deal,
Yeah.
with this deal, that deal.
Right.
We all have a historical lesson that was taught to us by department heads and managers. And I mean this in a good way, it's a teaching moment. We sit here today, I agree with Denise Clements on this. I agree with, there has to be some agreement to a level.
Yeah.
Where the argument comes in is, where's the level?
Of course.
Where's the line of transfer? How much trust do you have in your manager or your department head?
Right.
And I think that discussion's gonna happen.
Oh, I think
Whether it
it
happens this session or the next session, it's gonna happen because even the department heads are on board.
Yeah, I think I think everybody recognizes that there needs to be some
They would
level.
rather come up and tell you exactly what they need
Right, exactly.
and
And, we,
give it with them in good faith.
and it's clear that where everybody stands. That,
But
that's
the manager
necessary.
got into it
Yes.
and told them to do certain things that I'm just not a big fan of.
And you saw that
We
this
can
past,
disagree on
you
that.
saw this past meeting, the chief felt it was important to be in his budget,
Mhm.
and to get him filled at the beginning of the year, and he wanted it in his budget, and the town manager told him, take it out of your budget, we'll get it at the end of the year. So, I mean, it's needed, I'm not saying that, don't do the stuff that's needed, but when you have a manager submit a budget, you're hoping that that budget, and the average taxpayer is hoping that budget is there. And so the extra money should go back to the people on some particular items. If you need to pay the electric, you need to pay the gas, you need to pay fuel that you're short on, absolutely do the transfers, there's no questions about it. But when there's the questionable expenditures that are weighted to the end of the year, that should have been part of the original budget, That's what's questionable.
They probably should have, yeah.
Because there
Hold
was,
on, hold
there
on,
was
hold on.
one, there was one situation that happened last night that the chief of police came in with surplus money and wants to buy this trailer. Okay, now that is a capital item.
That's a capital item.
Okay,
Absolutely.
now, I'm sitting there, and because it was part of the accreditation that wasn't known that they needed it, I looked at it more of a emergency appropriation. But bring it forward to us. Don't, you know, like a drone, you're buying a drone under et
Yeah,
cetera.
oh, I agree with that.
You know what I'm saying?
I agree with
We
that.
need to just reinvent good faith amongst our department heads and councils, that's all.
Yeah, okay. Jasmine, then Jack.
I think there are separate issues here. I think when a town manager is looking at, I mean, because realistically, knowing our council, if they had brought in a request for chairs at the beginning of the year,
We would have shot
we
it down.
would have asked them to cut it out of the budget. So like, what are we doing? Like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. So at some point, we are literally asking town managers to trim down the budget from the very beginning.
Sure.
And so in essence, and these appropriations or allocations at PPP were not just about chairs.
No, it was
There
not.
were
It was
other
all-
pieces
it was all
about
pieces.
uniforms that were
Right.
needed for new people that went through the academy.
Mm-hmm.
There were mandatory pieces for the police department
absolutely.
that were
Absolutely.
required under the new Reform Act. So those are
Absolutely.
things that they could not anticipate
Mm-hmm. Right,
at the
sure,
beginning.
Sure.
We don't have a crystal ball, and neither does a town manager or anyone else. And so I think it's disingenuous to say that, oh, you should have put the chairs at the beginning. I can guarantee people would have made a fuss about chairs at the beginning. So
Yeah, that does happen.
And if you
I
had
think we
it in
have
the
to
beginning,
decide.
Kathy,
I think at one point, at the beginning or the end, I agree. If it is a capital expenditure, 100%, there should be oversight. That should come to the council. But if there are allocations within their own budget for, I mean, one of them is cleaning supplies.
Yeah.
Come on. Like that, we shouldn't be bringing all these little tiny
Right.
things every single time. Yes, if it's a capital, you know, if it's a game around equipment,
capital items.
large equipment, I would even agree with the whole piece around the drone, but some of these things were not things that they could have anticipated at the beginning.
and
Some of them
I'm
were
just saying
not.
that as an
We're not
example.
gonna agree with that.
The example was the chairs. Now, use your scenario. Now, if the council would have voted on those chairs in the beginning of the season and took those chairs out of the budget, you wouldn't be dealing it as a transfer at the end of the year, because it was already removed from the budget. I'm not opposed to doing the transfers, I'm not opposed, but it's just the way that some managers manage the budget. They tell the department heads. It was kind of surprising when you had two department heads of two major departments come here and say, the manager told us to do that, and we're gonna do it at the end of the year. That's
Okay.
all.
Okay, we got that. Jackie.
I just have to say, because it was brought up, artificially lowering rates consistently without actual understanding and needs for why there needs to be an artificial lowering is fiscally irresponsible.
That is true.
Any council that has done that, and they did it for decades, it's wrong.
We haven't got there.
So you can justify a one-time thing
Yeah.
for one-time circumstances, crazy out of the blue things that you know next year you're going to be able to make up for that loss. But I'm not going to sit here and say that we should just automatically $300,000 get thrown back to the tax base, anything beyond that, because that's what happened. And what happened was we didn't invest in our roads, we didn't invest in our infrastructure, we let our fire department become crap, we didn't invest properly in our police department. So, if we want to talk about fiscal responsibility, the height of fiscal irresponsibility, it would just to be have a blanket policy like that without actually allowing us to have some sort of ability to look at and say, no, we need to take that extra money and invest in our roads because we have a road that's falling apart. Or we have a building that's about to collapse that's a town building that we need to be investing in.
Right.
That's what put Southbridge in the hole it's in now, that we're trying to work and get out of.
Right.
And if we continue to talk about that fiscal strategy like it's going to work, we're just going to end up in the same situation again.
Okay. Denise.
I don't know, hard to follow now. You know, we just continue to refer back to the previous town manager who frankly just didn't have the town manager experience. And I'm really, really hoping that selection is way better this time around. And that if it's not, and it's recognized as such as the previous time, that action will be taken by the appropriate body to relieve this town of that or those issues. Last town manager was all about getting his own money and then leaving us. So, in deflating the budget to look good, to keep it at the don't go more than 1% or 2% increases or whatever. Yes, but I can understand Councillor Lazo's point in the fact that there are numerous same categories that always seem to end up with money and then seem to end up being used at the end. Well, then that's because during the budget process, it becomes a lazy man's budget in terms of not actually looking at things. I know that we've gone through budgets in Gen Gov where Jackie's asking about $1,000 here and $2,000 there. And I think one time we were able to reduce the budget to like $15,000 and we were very excited on the,
Something like
you
that,
know, which was like a some
Yes.
silly 0.5%, but it was
That's
something.
how we stopped.
It was money, and money is, it helps. So every bit counts, and to, Council, I say to Councilor Lazo's point, yes, there are, and then that requires these department people, police, fire, anybody else complaining that, they had it, took it out. Where else are they not looking closely to say,
Right.
geez, we seem to always consistently have 20% left here, or 30 or whatever left there. Maybe we've been inflating those in hopes that we can use it at the end of the year and transfer. But
If they can, they do.
and they do, right? But and now they're more mindful. They have to come every time for a transfer. Then it's more obviously more.
I mean,
in
we
your
did
face.
even to ourselves. We cut our own town council reserves budget to $80,000 as a recommendation of this subcommittee. The town manager ran with it, and it got approved. We consistently go through and find pockets of money that are consistently not
So
touched.
I think it's
during
always.
the budget
I've
process.
not been. You trust, you verify, you do all that. It's the council's responsibility for their only employee, which is their town manager, to make sure the town manager is understanding of a full council, not just one or two people. The council is who the manager reports to, all 9, understands what they're looking for, and to do the work of that. And obviously there are safeguards in place that if the town manager isn't doing his job, that he shouldn't be working for Southbridge or any other
Right,
town
exactly.
probably. But so the whole reason this was important was because this hadn't been the case up until 17 or 18 when suddenly
Right.
somebody banged on the charter and said, or banged the charter down and said, need to all come to council now. Everything needs to come. And we watched the trickle effect, and the meetings get to 50 agenda items because 25 were transfers, which nobody,
250.
get through them.
Yeah.
But still, my belief was always the running, the management of the town, the smooth operations, and the ability to spend more time on what really needs to be focused on, and not necessarily coming to council meeting with 3, $30 transfer, $100 transfer, $1,000 transfer even. I'm sure chiefs or department heads or whoever have, they have things they could do in their evenings besides
Right.
come back and waste time. Not waste time, it's never a waste to be accountable. It's just,
Better uses for that time.
Better use of
Yeah,
time, better
especially
use
when they're
of time
coming
in
to
this
subcommittee
community,
and then
so-
going to full council, and we're basically
Right.
rehashing the
So-
same
The same
discussion.
arguments
And even
on
that, a
Fridays.
lot of that transfer stuff got really good. I must say, one thing McCall did was to put a good piece of paper, somebody put a good piece of paperwork together in terms of making sure that when a transfer was out, there was
Yep.
documentation. I'm not sure what's happening with that, if it's still, I see sometimes things come in with not really any explanation, and that's wrong. You really better have your backup if you want this transfer to go through. It shouldn't just be rubber stamped. Otherwise, you might as well just let it be rubber stamped.
That is true.
So,
That is true.
those are the logic behind discussing it, and I hope that somewhere down the road, counselors come to the agreement that for a more efficient and smooth operation in this community, that stuff like this is not the primary, attention getter, that
Right.
there's so many other things you guys have to deal with.
Right, well, I think part of it is that we dealing with these tiny transfers of 300 and 500 and, 95, whatever they are.
Less than $10.
Or it can be. It's taking away from the resources that of our time in trying to do real policy work, and it's also taking resources from the people who are coming in to discuss these transfers from our town staff, so that we are putting them in situations where they have the extra time at subcommittee at the main council, so they end up, those who do take it are doing more time in their comp time, so they're not actually available
Right.
for
Right.
being in town hall so people can work with them,
Right.
whether it be us or the
They're
citizens.
not
of
spending the
Rome.
time on the day operations
Yes.
because they're spending the time on this stuff. And
Exactly.
that's just inefficient.
Exactly.
And also, just typing the stuff up, typing up your agenda, doing all that extra workload for even administration,
Exactly.
it's all,
I mean, if we'd been following the policy that we had in print, even
you would have it.
without the 30% line,
Right.
half of these items on the last PPP wouldn't have been there.
But you would have had a
Some of
report
them
on
should
them,
have
and you
been
would have
more.
known what was going
But some of them
on,
shouldn't
and
have.
you could have nipped
Yeah.
it in the bud if it looked like some sort of, mismanagement by the
Exactly,
manager or the
exactly.
department heads.
Right, exactly.
You would bring that information to the manager and request whatever it is you need to request to find out why it was happening.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Scott.
To the chair of the council, Davis, I agree with you 100% on what you said. And that's exactly what I said to the chiefs. There is some stuff in front of us right now, like the $97. I don't want to sit there with the $97.
Me
I'll be
neither.
honest.
It's a waste of time.
And to trust and verify, you hear the words transparency, oversight, great political words. But when the chairs came up, it kind of, 2 years ago, we bought all brand new chairs for that room, for that department. And then they were bought before we even voted for them. So, and I'm sitting there saying, okay, I'm supposed to trust and verify. And now, the department heads have created this aura of mistrust in some ways. And now, if the department heads want to hang it on the manager's style, or if they want to hang it on their own coat rack, it's up to us as councilors in the next budget season to change it.
Right.
And on behalf of the council and the council that I've served on since I've been on this round, I think we've done more in long-term planning with the capital committee.
Yeah.
The earmarking of road money, bringing the road plan off the shelf, getting the roads, trying to get roads done.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're heading in the right direction, gang.
Yeah, I think
And I think we're all on the same page on this issue. We might have certain little stones in our shoes.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I think in the end, I think we're in agreement to what you're saying.
Yeah.
And next year, next term, whatever, if it doesn't happen this time, we will work on it. But we need to work on it before budget season, not reactionary
Totally agree.
to the budget
That
season.
I agree.
And I said to the department heads last night, we're gonna pass all this, and we'll work on it after we're done this year. We'll get through it, and this policy will come back.
It will. It has to.
All right,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move that we postpone this discussion because I don't think we'll get anywhere tonight.
I think you're probably right. Okay.
Postpone indefinitely because it will be after the next general government. They'll end up taking it up, right?
More likely than not, I would say.
Is that procedurally the right move to postpone indefinitely?
Why-
you
what-
can't do
what-
that, you gotta either if it's a postpone.
Or can we
to
put
a
it on the
certain
table?
date, you could- If you
What
put on the
is-
table, then it would just be voted off the table. Right, so if it's a
When-
motion to put on the table, to lay on the table, then it would require a motion to.
Take it off the
take
table
it
at the
off
next
the table, and have
agenda.
be a majority motion to take it off.
Okay.
Well, we could just postpone. I mean, we could just postpone it to July, to like the first meeting in July.
To
Well,
the
yeah,
meeting.
we can
do
First meeting in
Postpone it to
July,
the
just
next
organizational.
I
Well, I
would-
mean, first
You
January.
you need to get your.
Yeah, we need to get the people in.
Yeah.
And they're
So,
not gonna be.
I move to lay it on the table. We just have to make a motion to remove it from the table after.
If you remember that it's on the,
That's-
I won't be here.
Right.
I'll be here, maybe. You'll be
I'll
here.
be here. Don't look at me, I don't know.
You're like, I don't know. You'll be here. Don't worry.
I'll be here.
Well, if there were three, then we know we could get it off the table.
All right. So I move that we place the agenda item on the table.
Okay.
Same building.
Is there a second, first of all?
Second.
Okay. Okay. Any further comments on tabling the agenda?
That's such a thing I hate to do, but
Yeah,
in
me
this
too, because
case,
it
I
tends to get
think
forgotten.
I think it would be the proper way, since it's not our council, it won't be the same makeup, and then that will be on them to pick it up. If they want to pick it up and run with it, that's on them. So
But I think the formality of taking it off the table is kind of a pain in the butt. I
you
mean,
just
whereas-
vote on it.
Whereas if we don't do anything,
If we
it
take
just
no
passes
action.
on.
But if we take no action, then there's nothing on the table for them to even consider. It's just gone. We take no action.
Well, first off, you were just reviewing. These were just we
Yeah,
weren't
we were
doing it.
just
We weren't
reviewing.
making any change. We weren't making our.
I mean, it did say,
Say,
or take any action
or take
thereon.
action.
Or take any action.
Or take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Does it say
take
or?
action. Yeah, it
And,
says action.
nope, it
Or.
says and.
It says
Where
and
is it?
take
Where is
any
it?
action
Yeah.
thereon.
Yeah.
So it's not an or, it's an and.
And take any. Well,
It
you
depends.
didn't. Yeah, but that's still any. There is no action to take at this point. This policy exists
Yeah.
as it is. If the next Gen Gov wants to pick up this policy again and look at it, they can.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you understand? This policy exists. We didn't delete it. We didn't do anything to this policy. It's here.
Yeah.
It's
it does
moved because
exist,
nobody's
yeah.
doing anything with it. Although they're supposed to be voting on it at each meeting.
Yeah.
So technically, but
They moved to 65.
so.
So I guess almost by definition, it's always on the table. Whenever
Well-
whenever the subcommittee wants to
I
take
think
it,
it's fine.
wants to
No,
throw it on the
because
agenda.
if you, so you've got a first and a second, you would have to remove that in order to not have a motion of doing anything. And then you would just like, yeah, we're just not review it. We're reviewing it and take any action thereon.
We're just not
we
taking
reviewed
any
it.
action.
We didn't take any action.
Yeah.
That
I
would
think
be,
tabling it is fine. Yeah.
I don't care either way.
it just
Doesn't matter
because,
to me.
it does.
Okay.
So is there a motion?
Wait.
Yeah, there's a motion to
There's a
table on the
motion.
floor.
Wait,
And a
wait,
second.
what was the intention? I remember this discussion back in the day when other councils used to table a lot of things and it would never go to council after that. And there was the discussion that subcommittees should not be tabling things that are under the jurisdiction of council.
That's another issue, though.
That's a whole nother issue, you know what I'm talking about,
It
right?
is.
Because there was this thing about, there were two things that were happening back in the day that I questioned big time, and that was tabling of things that didn't go to council, and the other thing was going to their own executive session, which made no sense in the end, because what was the subcommittee doing, going into executive session when they have no right to do that, because it's a council? So
Right. It's a weird
technically,
system, yeah. That was weird.
yeah. I would definitely vote, end up with a no if we end up with a vote, because that's right. Like, we haven't had to think about this in a long time,
Well,
because we've
these
been
kinds-
postponing to a certain date.
Some of these items actually maybe wouldn't be a bad idea for it to be done as a special council meeting rather than subcommittee. So the entire council is involved in the discussion because these are all items that affect basically the entire council in the way town government functions. And if everybody's kind of involved now anyway in the discussion, but well, those are
Is
here.
there a motion on the floor here?
Right, there was a
There
motion,
is.
you have to make a
There is.
decision as to whether you're gonna take it back or not.
You made the motion.
Whatever, sure. I'll withdraw the
I think it'll be
motion.
removed.
Like,
Because you
can we
don't
just-
know the
this
makeup
is-
of the agenda.
Second.
Okay, so we'll take
we don't even need a second.
Yeah,
We
so
just,
just remove
You
it.
just withdraw. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Okay, that's right. Okay, so I
So I
guess we're done
think
with
you're
that.
doing it as a postponement to future, or you're, not future, but to set,
yeah, it has to be postponed to a future date.
right?
Well, you can just postpone it to the next general government subcommittee meeting, which would be next session, right?
Mhm.
Well, Hannah is telling me we have a few transfers that we need to deal with before we get done, before the session's done, so it won't be to that meeting.
All right, 'cause you
They're probably for 20 cents, counselor,
They
okay?
probably are, yes.
All right.
yeah.
But we could.
I would just take no action.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
we take no action.
We
Okay,
take
fine.
no action.
It's done.
You
Okay.
reviewed it, we took no action,
Okay.
we got some ideas, suggestions, but we took no
All
action.
right,
And
agenda
we'll
item
just
number 6.
Pass a message on to whoever does Gen Gov chair
Whoever's
next.
in charge
say,
of
"Here,
Gen
this is what's
Gov,
going
or
on."
if somebody wants to, obviously if it's something that wants to be brought up, they ask to put it on a agenda.
Exactly.
Would it be fair to do that with also the next item as well?
I think you should postpone it myself.
We
because
could.
otherwise-
I think I'm looking at the next item. I'm like, it
It's
seems
the same.
it's
Well,
saying.
could we have a little discussion on it though?
Okay.
I would prefer to have a discussion on it, only
That's fine.
because I saw what this was.
Mm.
Okay. Item number,
Just vote to postpone
I
to.
would vote to postpone, otherwise it goes up.
there's nothing
No,
to
it
go up.
doesn't, we're not setting anything
There's
up.
nothing to go up.
We're reviewing it,
There's no changes that
We're
have
not
been
changing
made.
it. We're not
Nothing goes on.
recommending it.
There's already a policy on the books,
Yeah,
so.
this is a policy that exists, we're just reviewing it, we're talking about it in public.
Oh, okay, all right.
And then if we wanted to, but I don't expect to say anything, I just wanted to kind of cover why it's important to have more backup information.
Right. I mean, honestly, I think the only thing that Beyond that, I think the only thing that we would really need to change is get rid of that 30% language. Make sure
Oh,
that's
oh,
out of
we're
the
not talking,
policy.
we're done. I
We're
thought
done
we
with
were
that
talking
item.
about the next
Agenda
one.
item number
I'm
6.
saying for that.
Agenda item number 6, please, Mr. Chair.
So standard operating procedure number 13, designer selection procedures.
What's that all about?
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Let's
When I saw this, I went, huh? And I'm looking at this again and I'm like,
It's in our
I
policy.
remember this. I remember this. This was, it all had to do with the fire station building committee
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
it had to do, and so this is not enough to have a discussion on this. You have to have, there's a piece of the state law stuff that goes with this, and why there was an MBC, and why we now ended up appointing the council, which then should have selected an MBC, and then there was a lot to this. This was a huge discussion, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you I'm remembering everything
I
because
don't
I
remember
won't.
most of it, yeah.
But it really, when I read through this, it brought back memories of the fact that it was brought up to us by, I thought it was
It's
fire
right
chief or
before.
somebody at
It's
the
in the
time.
packet.
Oh, it is.
And
Yep.
it all,
It's
or
right
was it
before the
the,
transfer.
was it also about the
It's at the end
the
of
dog
last
shelter
agenda.
too,
Last-
rather than the animal
It's the second to
compound,
last
too,
agenda
because
thing in our
again, we
packet.
don't have a municipal building committee officially, like
Right.
one that communities
Right.
have municipal building committees, if anybody remembers this,
Yes,
that oversee all building projects.
Yes.
right.
We didn't have one in Southbridge, and in order to move forward with grants or different things for
Right.
different whatever, you
We
had
made the
to,
council to formally the municipal.
you had to
building
do
committee.
this, right?
Yes.
And since we didn't really have one, they decided to allot the town council as the overseer MBC thing, but then that the MBC could then have a selection committee, would then have a designer selection process thing. So there was the selection committee, which would go under, and so therefore the council wouldn't have any real jurisdiction on all the stuff that design committee did, which had to do with the building, the fire department too.
Specifically, yes.
There was a lot of little there was things but the only municipal buildings at the time were gonna be the firehouse
Yeah.
and the animal shelter, or whatever.
Well, now we've got a potential town hall project coming.
Right,
We'll
but
do something with that.
let's just, the
But
reason
we
this
still-
was put on.
Yes, we still do not have a municipal building committee.
Right, that to
We
my
have never
knowledge.
debated
it-
that as
When
a
I saw
council. We've
this,
never
I
looked
went,
at
oh my
that.
gosh,
Yeah.
I just, whoa, that's
The
right, I don't think they ever did anything.
The council has never
with it.
done this.
The council, right, because you need volunteers, you need people to be part of that. So I don't know, to be truthful, somebody would need to do some more digging with, and I'm trying to remember if it was Woodson or was, at the time, it could have been, not even Normandin, it would have been,
His predecessor.
yeah, I know, I
What was his name? Mark DeFranco.
DeFranco.
Oh,
I'm just saying, this was something, way 5 years, 6 years, whatever it was, that's 17, right? So, and that started before then. It was brought to our attention, and I think it was more brought to the attention because of the fire building, but it
Yeah.
then got brought up in subject matter with like Woodson, I think because of animal shelter too, or something. So rather than, the nitty gritty was the nitty gritty. There were
Right.
rules and regulations. It wasn't something we all made up, and there was some, we had a lot of this stuff was already like proposed from somewhere, the state, something. They didn't just make this all up and.
No,
I'd like to
there was
say-
language that was presented to us
Yeah,
from
the
the state, and then
right.
it was sent to the lawyers for.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
Right,
there
it's
was
like
a lot
MGLs
of,
type of
right,
stuff.
there was standard stuff, and there were a couple spots, but for me to actually, I only picked this up yesterday, because I only found out on Monday or whatever. But for me to really try to say, geez, do I remember where we inserted Southbridge stuff? There were a few things I saw, and I said, oh, I remember that, and I think we added a couple of things because it pertained to Southbridge, because we were using council as the
Yep.
NBC, and it was legal
Right.
to do it. But other than that, honestly, it would take some serious review to really understand the 5 pages that are here, and the logic and all behind it. So as far as changing it at this moment, I don't think you're trying to recommend any kind of change, because
No,
you
no,
would have all
at
had
this
to do
point,
an awful lot more homework than I did. I didn't know what you had done last week before I
Yeah, we
picked this
never
up,
got to
so,
this.
We didn't.
right.
Get to it.
So I wondered if we
Great
had
concept.
any other kind of backup to it, but
Yeah.
And
yeah. So
this-
that's I know it, really, I probably talked in circles, but I'm just saying it was something that was necessary,
Yep.
and we did it this way because it would expedite and serve the purpose and get it going and all that. So that's all I know. Yeah.
I
So
think
this was really bad policies you chose to cover.
I just grabbed the two that were the first ones in the packet. 'Cause I think the whole idea was to start
First
working our
ones,
way
that's
through
13
the
and 14.
books.
What happened to 1 through 12?
They just happen to be the ones on the top of the pile. The way the packet is reversed. So those are just one
Well,
of the
anyway, so I would again say that this is something that needs further,
I'm
for
sure
us
it
to make
does.
any
There's no
kind of
question it
logical.
does.
and I would also want somebody from the manager's office here too to help provide that insight.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
This is one of
I'll
those critical
call somebody
ones.
who used to be. Honestly, it's one of those things.
No, yeah, like
It
you need
comes
we
with
need the subject matter experts on
history.
this one.
Oh yeah.
And the
Right.
problem is, there's lack of history with
Mhm.
this. Now, there may be some other previous counselors even that might remember some of this because of the building stuff, but,
Mhm.
you know, it came out of necessity, because we didn't have it, and it was a necessity
Right.
when we were starting,
It was
going back with that
it was a
building committee stuff.
technicality regarding the fire station
Yep.
project that if we
Yeah,
didn't
almost
do it,
like-
it was not going to go anywhere.
Right.
'Cause the
Exactly,
state
they
would have come
couldn't
down on
move
us or
forward
something
with the design
serious.
process or something.
Yeah.
So, I remember that part of it. So,
Of course, on the flip side, I don't know if, like, it mentions minority and women-owned business and other stuff like that at the bottom. I don't know if we've ever actually even looked at that.
yeah, I saw that, and I actually was surprised at that language too, because I don't remember that, but, you
That's,
know,
I
don't
think
have a
that's
problem.
probably state law.
It probably is.
Yeah.
Because it
Probably
refers
is.
to,
Yeah, because it's a-
because
yeah.
of state grants is probably part of
There's
state.
certain there's certain businesses that the state is trying to support.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if it says it right there,
Mhm.
if it includes funding from, provided by the Commonwealth in whole or part, reimbursements, grants, and the like,
Right.
then they must incorporate the minority-owned business enterprise, women-owned business enterprise, participation goal. You know, there are goals to be met. I imagine there must be a percentage that they prefer.
They have to have
Yeah.
certain
Right.
certain employee metrics. They have yeah.
Let's hope we
Yeah,
can find
exactly.
ones that are, you know, that
Preferably-
would want to even.
They met those goals and are preferably low.
I move to postpone this item, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think this is another one of those things. I think we take no action because we're not going to do
Yeah.
anything.
Oh yeah, never mind. You're right.
Yeah. The only thing I was curious about, I don't know if you noticed this, is that at least in my version, you notice that there's a few weird typeface changes. I wonder if people were changing language in this version, which doesn't make it.
I noticed
doubt
that
it.
too. Like the MGL is in like
But
sans
there's a
serif, while
there's a
everything else
couple-
is in
There's
serif.
a couple
Yeah.
of lines that are just weird.
As I said, I think they were
Typefaces.
using documents that were already
And they probably
done,
just-
and so there's where your,
Yeah.
that would be your, let me look at that more carefully and
Yeah.
see if Southbridge inserted something that was
Yeah.
to us.
Right.
That would be my,
I mean, there are no clear Southbridge references in this document.
well, yeah, but I mean, okay, something
But I
that,
know you mean.
I'm not saying it says Southbridge wants to do this,
No,
I'm
I get
saying
that,
it's
right.
something that we maybe put in
To bring it
that pertained to what we needed and
Yeah, I know,
wanted,
I
is
know.
all I'm saying.
Right,
But,
right.
so that would be possibly where that would come in. Somebody sent the document,
Mm-hmm.
the document got
Right.
Again, it's just my recollection, that's it, which could be following.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we're done.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Well, let's go.
Denise wants to stay at the meeting, I guess.
So a second, third, all.